Today, we're in conversation with the world's leading singing bowl expert, Joseph Feinstein. Joseph has spent last 25 years cataloging antique singing bowls, working with museum, universities, and laboratory experts in 10 different countries to understand the history of these beautiful objects. His book, The Singing Bowl Book, is the only evidence-based book about the history of singing bowl. Welcome to Saptarishis Astrology. How are you doing today,
Thank you
Joseph?
very much. I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I am good too. So, Joseph, as I understand, you're the founder of Singing Bowl Museum as well as Himalayan Bowls, right?
That's right. I was the first person to sell singing bowls on the internet, and that was HimalayanBowls.com, which I no longer run. After COVID and I started getting a little older, I decided to pass it over to a younger guy who has continued, many years relationship that I have with the artisans in Nepal that continue to make the bowls today. And he's keeping this traditional handicraft industry going, which is, a 1,000-year tradition.
So, if I may ask, what got you interested in singing bowls in first place? Why singing
Well,
bowls
when
for
I
you?
when I was younger, I was a voice and speech teacher, and I was still in my 20s. And some of my students, especially the older students, would come to me after class and say that they were getting health benefits from the breathing exercises that we were doing, the voice work that we were doing. And I started looking into that and discovered um, a book by Mitchell Gaynor, who is an oncologist and was working with his cancer patients with singing bowls in their recovery and using singing bowls as an adjunct tool to help people with their well-being as they were recovering from their cancer treatments. And I asked the question, well, what's a singing bowl? And started finding them all over, and they just kind of showed up in my life, and I started collecting them for myself. I was really just taken with them and fell in love with them and started collecting them. And it all started from that interest in why does breathing improve someone's headache or back pain? Why are these voice exercises, improving people's mood and well-being? And that led me on a long journey now, 30 years since then almost. And I've worked with many people as a teacher and well known for the singing bowls, but I've actually spent most of my time working with special needs infants and adults with chronic pain and helping people feel better and improve in their breathing and movement and how they function in their daily life.
So, when you're using singing bowl for your purposes, for a therapeutic purpose, do you prefer the ancient singing bowls or do you prefer the newly made, constructed singing bowls?
Well, just to clarify, I actually don't do singing bowl therapy. I don't, when I say I work with infants and adults with pain, I'm actually doing movement-based therapeutic work. I'm using my hands and my voice, and I don't use the singing bowls in that setting, actually. So, contrary to the recent trends, and I was actually one of, if I could say, the pioneers in sound healing work. But I don't ever use the term sound healer or say that I'm a sound healer. I am a student of the work of Moshe Feldenkrais. So I was a Feldenkrais practitioner. I was the longtime apprentice of one of the world's top experts in the Feldenkrais method. And so this is a neurological based approach to human function. With the singing bowls, the antique singing bowls are absolutely above the clouds compared to all other instruments. The whole singing bowl craze started with the antique singing bowls, and they are so far superior that it's hard to even compare them. It's you know I don't even know what kind of parallel I could draw with other kinds of objects. It's like a supercomputer to an old calculator or something. They're so exponentially different and on such an order of magnitude better than what the majority of people experience that it's kind of an odd point of view for me to see the craze about crystal bowls and the brass singing bowls. The vast majority, many hundreds of thousands now of singing bowls have been sold that are these very inexpensive brass bowls that aren't even really singing bowls. They're just decorative brass bowls that can be manufactured very quickly. And so they do make a little bell sound. And people started making them in big numbers and calling them singing bowls. But they're really not the same as the traditional hand hammered bronze singing bowls. And none of them are anywhere near what the antiques do. So the whole singing bowl craze started with the antiques, and that's what makes people go, wow, this is really something amazing. But unfortunately, the vast majority of people never experience it. They're on the other end of the spectrum with these little, basically chimes, these little dingy brass bowls that really don't do the same thing. So the antiques are very special. I have some right here. I can show you. Here's
Oh, great.
a
Love to
large,
see that.
deep antique. Actually, I'm wearing the microphone is in my earbud, so I don't know if the sound comes through. Can you hear anything from that?
Hmm.
No, because I have these slings earphones. I don't really have a microphone that can work with this forum, but you can hear hundreds of them on singingbowlmuseum.com. So I
Okay. Yeah,
apologize for
I
that.
remember going there. Yeah.
Yeah,
But
when you asked that, I wasn't sure if that would work because it's the technology cancels anything in the environment.
yeah. Oh,
So
yeah, the new ones, right? Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, Joseph, if I got it right, you're a longtime practitioner of Tibetan Buddhism, right?
that's right. You can see behind me the
So,
wonderful Tonka paintings from my painted by my friends in Kathmandu in
oh, they're
Nepal, and
beautiful.
beautiful statues from the Statue Maker Shop. You can see on
Oh,
Facebook
wow.
Statue Maker Shop.
Wow.
Absolutely the best. They are multi-generation statue makers in from Patan, from Kathmandu Valley, that are
Yeah.
keeping their tradition alive. And that's really been my mission for all these years, was to keep all the handicrafts alive and um, to help support the artisans over there.
So, do you think there's any connection between Buddhism and singing bowls?
Well, in my book and in my research, what I've found is that the connection is through the collection bowls, the begging bowls. So in ancient Buddhism, they were using bowls made of stone as collection bowls in the temples. So there's still a few of them that exist. There's some even found in Afghanistan and faraway places where they found some of the real ancient early Buddhist sites. So the old collection bowls were known to be made of stone. And we still see today in Vietnam and Japan and Korea still using a singing bowl in the Buddhist temples. And in Vietnam, they're still using them as a collection bowl. So in some of the mountaintop Zen temples, they have the monk there playing the singing bowl, and the practitioners will come in and drop donations right in the bowls. So I believe the singing bowls are part of this tradition of a collection bowl in the temple. And in Japan, it's interesting that you could see where things transition, that probably due to thievery, they stopped using the bowls as a collection bowl, and they have those casks. If you go to a temple in Japan, they have these wooden casks with the slats on the top that lock, that you can put money in, but you can't put your hand in there to take the money out, right? So it was to stop thieves. They moved the bowls inside, and they still use them. And what I observed in Japan was that the larger and wealthier the temple, the larger the bowl. So again, going to the idea of the collection bowls, the singing bowls became kind of a symbol of the wealth of the temple. So they moved onto the altar, and they are traditionally placed in the Buddha's left, If you're facing the altar, it would be on the front right side end of the altar, and you see them there in Japanese home shrines. They would be in China, had China's culture not gone through a dramatic, you know, destruction of religious objects in the 70s. Um, and you still see them in use in this way. There's an old movie from, I think from the 80s or the 90s from South Korea called Why Did Bodhidharma Go to the East? I think it's called. I probably got that title slightly wrong. But in that film, there's a monk standing outside rhythmically playing on in this case, it's a wooden bowl, but it's the same concept that he's playing the bowl, knocking it kind of like they do with the wooden fish. And people come and put money into the bowl. So as a way of announcing his presence, letting them know to come and make a donation. So that's still in practice today in Vietnam. In my book, I have a photo of a monk doing it. He's playing the bowl, and people come up and drop money right into the bowl. So now that tradition also persists. People know in Theravada Buddhism in Thailand and Burma that they do the collection bowls and they collect food in the morning. And perhaps historically they were related, but there's no direct relationship between the collection bowls today and the singing bowls as far as I've been able to find. They're quite different. But something very weird happened was that tourists started going to in Bangkok, there's an area where they make the begging bowls, and those are made differently. They make it out of several pieces to symbolize the Buddha's bowl that was broken into several pieces, etc. So they make it in several pieces and put it together in different kinds of metal. Doesn't make a sound at all because the way that they make it out of several pieces, it just goes clunk clunk. Doesn't ring like a singing bowl. But tourists started showing up there less than maybe only 10, 15 years ago to this street where they make those begging bowls and trying to make sound with them like they're singing bowls. So now if you go there, they will give you a mallet to go with the begging bowl as if it's a singing bowl, even though it's a complete different tradition. So it just shows how the traditions get kind of mixed up and mixed together and overlap. And it's actually taken me many, many years and looking at thousands of objects and like you mentioned in 10 countries to figure out exactly where the singing bowls came from. And where they come from is actually surprising because they come from ancient Persia. They
Oh.
don't originate with Buddhism at all. They actually are based on earlier bowls from ancient Persia and ancient Khorasan, which is historically on the Silk Roads, historically in certainly the eastern part of those kingdoms was Buddhist, a few thousand years ago. And the technology at some point traveled along the Silk Roads from those areas and reached India and Nepal, where they still make the bowls using that ancient technology today. But it was based, there are two traditions based, one from ancient Persia and a later tradition that was brought in from Southeast Asia, from uh, Cambodia, Thailand, perhaps Burma and northern India
It looks
through
like it has
Burma
a
and northern
vast
India.
history.
It's a long history, and anyone who studies Asian history knows the overlap and that
Mhm.
there were no borders that we understand today. Those borders didn't exist. You go to Vietnam and there's ancient Hindu temples in Vietnam. Most people don't expect to find that there, but the trade routes, the difference between using sea routes in ancient times and the overland routes that they could travel to traverse these distances connected cultures in ways that are largely changed today. But if you go back historically, it all kind of falls into place.
Now, what you just told us a moment ago, I understand there are different kind of singing bowls. Can you tell us something about that?
There's different kinds of singing bowls. The tradition is very different. The bowls that I described from Vietnam, Japan, and China actually look very different from the Himalayan type.
And
And
I don't want to cut you here, but if you have something to show on screen, that'll be amazing. If you don't, that's fine. But if you have something nearby,
um
show us the
it
difference.
It would take me just a minute to get one, but yeah, I can.
Okay.
So the Himalayan bowls, there's the three types. There's the Jambadi, which means big bowl,
And the origin?
and these are from Nepal, northern India, Himalayan. That's why I call them Himalayan bowls
Himalayan.
because the
Mhm.
modern borders don't really. Um, People call them Tibetan singing bowls, but actually most Tibetan things are made in Nepal, and they call them Nepali, but actually some stuff may be made in northern India, and the borders are a little bit fluid in this part of the world. So Himalayan, um, and the Jambadi is a Nepali word for big bowl, and they are the large bowls with a round bottom. And then the typical, most of them are called a thadu body, which means a straight bowl. And this is a very early example, and they are less rounded. They're more of a square shape. And there's a lot of varieties. If you look on my website, singingbowlmuseum.com, I have them organized by the different types, which I've found fall into different ages. So there's uh, kind of a timeline of each type. And that is one of the earlier types, and you don't find those later. You know, they were only made in this particular period, and then there's an evolution. And my next project will be making a visual timeline and on the website and in a new book that you can see the evolution from the earlier to the later types. And then the thadu body, they uh, come in many sizes. So it's a small thadu body, they usually call it. Some people would just call it a cup. And then there's another kind of enigmatic type, which is a uh, lower bowl, looks just more like a normal soup bowl or something. And those are called Manipuri bowls. And Manipuri seems to refer to Manipuri region in northern India, although it could also be a Nepali word. And that may be part of the trade route that came from uh, Southeast Asia through that region, although today there's nothing like bronze manufacturing in Manipuri region as far as I know. So the East Asian bowls are a bit different. It's a very rare, what I believe is a Chinese bowl. And the Chinese and Japanese bowls are a lot taller. So the proportions are quite different, that they're much taller. A lot of the ones that you see, the Japanese bowl have the black anodized finish and the very heavy dimpling, very heavy hammered dimpling. They don't sound nearly as nice as the Himalayan singing bowls, to be honest.
They're very
But
deep in sound. I recently had the pleasure of playing one. It was huge, big, just like you were explaining, and the mallet was so heavy that
yeah,
I could hardly pick it. But the sound was very deep. You could hardly hear it, but it vibrated for a very long time. That's what I
oh, that's a
could
good
get.
one.
That was a good
Very
one, you
good.
think?
Usually, well, people collect the Himalayan singing bowls because they sound a lot better. The East Asian bowls tend to sound less in tune. They sound a little less loud and sonorous.
Yeah,
The
that's true.
Himalayan bowls are made really beautifully, and they tend to have a longer ring and nicer tuning and a more nicer vibe all around. So people don't really collect the Japanese bowls. They're not as commonly found too because there weren't as many to begin with, and a lot of them are still in temples. So the other type is a just like with the Himalayan bowls, they come in kind of a large and a small size. So the typical on a home shrine in Japan, you'll see one of these. And
Does that
uh,
play though? Does that make any sound for the size?
oh yeah,
It
sure.
does?
Oh yeah, yeah. They can get even smaller. Here's the smallest Himalayan bowl I ever collected.
Oh, it's beautiful.
It's only about
Oh,
3 inches across. It's very, very tiny, and it makes a sound. I'm sorry, I have
I
the noise
understand.
canceling thing that makes it you can't hear anything, but yeah, I was actually just explaining it to my two young daughters that there's kind of a range where they sound good. So in between about 4 inches and 12 inches, the singing bowl sounds really great. larger than that or smaller than that, you start to get into the physics of the object, the physics of the metal, that the sound is not as good anymore. So the larger a bowl gets, the more out of tune it tends to become. And the thicker a bowl gets to it, they tend to get a little bit more dull and uh, ring less long. So you want to have this kind of ideal thickness, especially kind of a medium thickness that's really gives you a nice long bell tone and nice tuning. Um, Anybody is ever, I've offered always a service to, help people because there's a lot of confusion about singing bowls in the marketplace. And so the easiest thing to do if you're shopping anywhere for a singing bowl is to look on my website to compare, because you can get a really true sense of what a singing bowl should be by hearing them. And a good singing bowl should ring for a minute or longer, should sound nicely in tune. They produce three audible tones. So there's a low tone, um, medium harmonic overtone, and a high harmonic overtone that you can hear. They're producing more tones, more vibrations than that if you put it on an oscilloscope, but that's what we can hear. And then some bowls, if they're very deep, you get an extra octave because they get that very deep octave, and then there's three tones above that we can still hear. But most of them you can hear three tones distinctly, and how those three tones harmonize is what determines how nice the bowl sounds. So a lot of them, those tones are out of phase with each other, and it makes it sound dissonant. It's what I call the internal tuning or internal harmony of the bowl. And you want those three tones to line up nicely so that the tone sounds really nicely in tune. And that actually has been my specialty all these years. Where really I did two things that made me, in Nepal they call me the singing bowl king. And I did two things that made me the singing bowl king. One was that I was the first person to record them and sell them individually on the internet. So nobody, and I was shopping for them. I was, why can't I hear it? I want to be able to hear it before I buy it. Nobody was doing that. So I was the first person to start recording the sounds and selling individual bowls where you could add it to a shopping cart and buy it. Everyone else said, call us on the phone. We have singing bowls. So this was that long ago that I was able to be the first shopping cart where you could buy these. And the other thing that I did that was special was that I actually went to Nepal and I hand selected every one. So it was amazing that they even let me do that, but they let me go through all of the bowls and everywhere that I went and cherry pick the very best sounding ones. And I was able to build this massive collection for years. And in Himalayan bowls, what I did was sell them kind of from, they kind of naturally sell from the bottom up. So the cheaper ones tend to sell faster. And then I would intentionally kind of hold on to the better ones. I don't really want to sell this one. And had the idea very early on. It's actually, I know from when I registered the website, it's about 22 years ago that I had the idea for the Singing Bowl Museum and registered that domain name beside the very best examples of every type. So the idea was to keep at least one example of every type of bowl. And that expanded because I noticed, well, some are a little bit this color, some are a little this color, some have this kind of decoration, some the decoration is a little different, some this one's a little bigger. So I ended up with many examples of every type of bowl, up to 1,000 pieces. So that was the original collection, was of the Singing Bowl Museum, was 1,000 pieces of the real antiques, all hand selected for the very best sound and vibration and condition. Now I've sold a lot of those, so now I'm down to about 200 individual bowls that are on the website right now, and about 200 more that I found with my latest discovery about the history of singing bowls. I have a lot of articles about the what I think are very meaningful discoveries, but they're just about this little object. But I have a lot of articles about the discoveries I've made. And the most recent one in the last year was that many of these were made as pairs. They were made as sets to go together. And again, we see this in Japan. And it was a question for a long time because in Japan, there's a big bowl and a small bowl, and you see them in pairs in the temples. So there's actually kind of three sizes. There's a big, medium in the temple, and then the small bowl that I showed you in the home. So this is an example of a small and a medium. And then the big bowls, like you experienced, you said you played one of those very big ones. That's a real temple piece that would be in the music area of the temple. Well, I discovered that this is also true with the Himalayan bowls. Let me show you some. Not the most exact match, but just to give you an example, that they're the same proportions, the
Yeah. And
same
the
the
shape is very
same
similar.
engraving, the same
Yeah.
shape, and then the tones match.
And the
So
thickness,
they're
what about
tuned
the thickness?
together.
Since we can't see that about this.
They're
Okay.
proportionally very
Proportionally.
similar. They have
Yeah.
the same line on the top of the rim, and
Yeah.
then the tones match. So one is an octave higher than the other.
Because of
And
the
I
size.
found a well, they were made to go together. So they did some kind of a tuning process to get them to match sonically. And I found a lot of them that are like this, especially in pairs, but some are three pieces, and some of them are even larger pieces. I've found whole octave sets, so they were made like a musical scale. And I'm just need to record these and put them onto the website. But I have something like out of out of my this collection, the ones that I was able to figure out that these are real exact matches, something like 60 or 70 of those that are really so exact that they look like they were made to go together. And
So cool.
that's been a really cool discovery to see that and to confirm that and to actually be able to match a lot of them up so that they don't get separated like so many
I'm
must have
sure.
been separated already. So people
So
make
are
their
there,
own sets and put together combinations in any way you like. You can combine them, and
yeah.
three or more, you start to get this very beautiful kind of angelic sound. And you can combine any number of them, but this confirms that historically they were actually combining them and making them to
They're
go
like
together.
those Japanese dolls that fit into each other. They're meant to be
Like
together, right?
they are meant to be together. Some of them do
Yeah.
fit together like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. Are there different ways of playing a bowl, and what's the role of a mallet when you're playing it? Does it matter what mallet we are using? Because I've gone through some of the videos and I know you do talk about it. So if you can tell us about different ways of playing it, if there are, and the
sure.
role of mallet.
Yeah, the mallet is actually much more important than people think. If you have a singing bowl and you think it can't sing around when you play it around the rim, that's usually the diameter of the mallet. So there's two ways to play the bowls. One is you strike it, and traditionally they were played by striking it. So you hit it right at the top of the bowl from the side. So this way, you don't hit it like this. That doesn't really make any kind of a sound. You want to also don't hit it down here because the vibration is happening mostly at the rim. So you want to hit it sideways and directly at the rim, and that gives you the best bell tone. And then the other way is that people like to do is I call it the party trick. You play it around the rim by
That's true.
continuous friction. And that takes a little practice and some explaining to understand how it works, but you basically just keep rubbing and it makes a continuous singing sound that you can keep playing for as long as you want. And generally,
So
one
does
or of the harmonics will be emphasized when you do that. Either the low tone or the mid tone or the high tone will be emphasized when you play it around the rim. When you hit it on the with a soft mallet like that, you're hearing all the tones at once. So you actually get the fuller tone, and it's less work. You just hit it with a soft mallet, but you do want the padded mallet. Most singing bowls just come with a wood mallet, and
yeah.
you really want to have the padded mallet to hit it with and a leather wrapped mallet for playing around the rim. You can play around the rim with the bare wood. It tends to emphasize the very high tones. So if you want a more mellow tone, you use the leather wrapped mallet.
Okay. And does the shape matter which way you're playing? Like the one that you just showed us, it's more, straight at the ends, whereas some are a little more curved. So would you change the way how you play each one of them or no?
Yeah, you that's a good detailed question. You want to basically match the angle of the bowl. So a customer recently pointed out that with the low bowl like this, it's easier sometimes to hit it from the inside. And the reason is if you hit it from the outside, you may not be getting, the good contact with the rim. You may be hitting it from a funny angle. So you want to make sure that the angle is right, that you're hitting it right from the outside and not kind of sideways like this. But if you experiment with that a little bit, you
How you
figure out
play it.
where
And then
the best place to play it. The other thing is the most bowls have what I call a sweet spot, which is where you play it around the outside. So if you hit it in one place, the low tone will warble more. It'll go wah 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 wah. If you turn the bowl around and hit it in another place, one of the high harmonics will warble more, and you'll hear it go wah 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 wah. And if you turn it to another place, there's one place on most bowls, not the little cheap brass bowls, on a hand hammered bronze bowl or on an antique, there's usually one place that I call the sweet spot where you hit it and it sounds really clear and steady. And they kind of have a little bit of life to them that way, that where you hit it and how you play it really does create a different tone, gives you a different effect. You can, with a nice bowl, you can get a lot of different sound effects out of it. And with practice, you get good at bringing out different tones and different effects. So they actually make a lot of little various tones.
now, before we come to an end, I have one question for our viewers. And this has happened with me. I went to an exhibition and a booth, the person tried to sell me a bowl saying it's an antique bowl when it wasn't.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
apart from what you've told us, where we don't have the access to your website or any other place, and in the moment, what is a quick way to tell if we are getting an authentic antique singing bowl? Is there a quick one?
Yeah, there's a couple of things I can tell you to look for right away. One is that any that have decorations all over them, I'm just looking to see if I have
Which is
something
very
like that.
common these days.
I don't have any right here. I have a few, but they're put away somewhere. But anything that has the Om Mani Padme Hung or a picture of a Buddha, any decorations covering the whole bowl, those
Even
are
on the
never
inside.
antiques
Even on the
anywhere.
inside, they have pictures of Buddha, right?
On the inside, they can have the
Yeah.
raised relief. They can have just the engravings. Antiques only have the only kind of here's this is the most elaborate kind of decoration on an antique.
How
They're
beautiful is
engraved.
that?
That's all of the decoration that you see on an antique. That's
And then you have
they
this
never
the
have
circle one.
pictures. Yeah, they're geometric designs. Mostly they're just lines like this. They're just little lines.
Yeah.
And then there's a very, very few with, I don't think I have one here. There's a very, very few that have little floral engravings that they're
Oh,
again, they're
they're
engravings.
like scallops, you mean?
Let me grab one. I'll show you.
Okay.
I'll have to edit. These are not very common. Can you
Oh,
see the kind of floral
yes.
engravings?
They're beautiful.
So this is very elaborate for an antique
Yeah, even
singing
the
bowl.
inside.
Yeah, and they were done all the way around with this kind of floral motif. And a lot of them, it's worn away, so you just see the little leftover little indentations and little lines, wispy lines sometimes. But a
So the
lot of
new
them
ones
were
won't be like
probably
this.
decorated. New bowls don't look like that, and antiques never have the writing and the more elaborate pictures on them with those heavy kind of it's done with acid etchings. There's a new thing that they're doing in India where they're taking some new bowls and some antiques and they're doing this very elaborate kind of filigree work where they're cutting this heavy lattice into the whole bowl. It's beautiful work. It looks really beautiful, but that's a new one that people are calling antiques that they're definitely not antique. It's new work. It's extremely elaborate where they cover the whole bowl with this kind of lace-like design. Really beautiful, intricate work, but no, not antique at all. The antiques, you'll see this kind of geometric patterns, the little circles, little triangles, but none of those elaborate designs. So that's the easiest way, is to look for the decorations, because anything decorated is new. And the other thing, if you're looking at it in person, you can look for machine marks. So if you look right at the rim of an antique should look a little bit rounded. So some of them you can see there's 90-degree angles where a tool has been used on it, and you'll see kind of sharp angles going in different directions. If you look around the bowl, you'll see something like that. You'll see file marks where there's lines, parallel lines going in the same direction, or
Yeah.
you'll see little tool marks right at the edge where the edge was angled and filed away. And that's looking for signs that it's new is actually an easy way to tell that it's not antique. So that's sometimes easier than looking, oh, is this a real antique? If you spot anything that's a giveaway that it's new, then it's probably new.
And the
And
color,
also,
probably you think?
no, the color can be faked really easily,
Okay.
because you can naturally oxidize the metal and it's identical color. It's actually real. They really are oxidized, just speeds up the process. So the color is actually very identical. I actually put side by side pictures in the Singing Bowl book of very similar bowls, one an antique and one brand new, and it's very hard to tell the difference. They're the same shape, they look almost identical. So the way to tell would be to look for signs that it's new. And also, there's a lot of telltale signs that something is a real antique. You have to look under magnification. So I use a little jeweler's loop, a little 10x or 20x magnifying glass. And when you look on, that's in the book too. I have side by side pictures. When you look under magnification at the surface of a new bowl, it looks like it's painted. It looks smooth and very uniform. And when you look under magnification at a real antique, they look wild. They have all kinds of little lines and dots and scratches going in different directions, and little crackle and little spots of green here and there. So you see a lot more variation in the surface of the metal, and that's the best way to really know. Is you have to know what antique bronze looks like. But the easy thing too is to send me a picture. I get pictures pretty much every week. I just got one yesterday. It was an antique, but then of course she's, how much is it worth? And that I usually can't tell, because it's
That must be
it's
a tough
much more
question.
subjective. Well, it's much more subjective by the condition, uh, how nice it sounds, how long it rings, and the quality of the vibration. It's some of them really are special, like, wow, this is, makes your house feel like a temple. And most of them are just kind of like, you know, kitchen bowls. So, and a lot of them may
It's
have been
it's
kitchen bowls. There's actually some types, especially now,
they,
people are selling all kinds of other bowls and calling them singing bowls. And historically too, some of them certainly could have just been kitchen bowls. A lot of them, I think, I've found enough evidence that they indeed were used,
in the
you
kitchen.
know, in no, in a musical and religious context. But some types certainly could have been kitchen bowls. Some types seem like they were more likely to be collection bowls, monks bowls, even uh, the begging bowls. Some are chang pots, they call them, that they're used to make the chang, the beer that they make over there, or chang glasses. There's a type of kind of shot glass that they use to drink the chang out of, and people confuse those with singing bowls sometimes. Some of them are rice pots. I mean, we know that they're rice pots, but people sell them for a few $100s as singing bowls. And so historically, possibly, I think at least some of them were coming from this tradition of the collection bowls. Some of them certainly could have been utilitarian or multi-purpose bowls. Some of them could have been used in animal sacrifice, because that's a big tradition over there
Yeah, that's
too.
true.
In
That's true.
Hinduism, they're doing a lot, and they use bowls in that context. So we don't know the whole history of these objects, but what we do know is that some of them were made extremely finely, are really high-end objects that must have been, real treasures even when they were made. When this was new, it would have looked just like gold. I mean, they polished bronze. Um, I can show you an example. This is a piece that I polished 20 years ago.
Look at that. Oh my God.
And look how golden it still looks.
And it's so shiny.
20 years ago, I polished that. It looked just kind of dull like that. And it's
Wow.
been in the open air, it's been untouched.
Still
The
looks new.
really high quality bronze like this, when it was new, it would have looked very reflective, like gold, very shiny. And you can see that in the new ones today. And they maintain that shine. And when they're that finely made, they were really, a high end object. It's not something that every villager had to eat their rice out of, I don't think. So a little
Um,
more special. And then I've
yeah.
collected some of the most special pieces. That was kind of my mission.
Joseph, this has been really great, and I thank you for sharing for this insightful conversation and sharing your wisdom with us. Thank you so much. We
Thank
really,
you.
really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. I have lots of videos on YouTube talking about the bowls and the history and how I make sets and how I think about the bowls. I'll be doing more as now I'm kind of coming to an end of selling the bowls, which I've really been trying to stop selling them for many years, and now I'm really kind of liquidating the antiques and getting rid of the last antiques, letting other people take them over, and I'll focus more on uh, making music, making videos for people to enjoy the sounds, writing another book, and focusing more on education and just enjoying the sounds going forward. I get so busy with selling them that I don't get to do the more creative part that I really want to do. So it'll probably be another year or two before they're all gone. But after that, I'll be focusing more on writing more books about them and making more YouTube and music content.
Oh, thank you so much. And it looks like you'll be hearing from me very soon. I need some before you finish your inventory.
I would really recommend anyone who wants one of the antiques because they are really in. There's not going to be any more for another 100 years, so get them
Oh,
now.
sure. Yeah,
There will be more in
exactly.
100 years because they're making great bowls now, but it takes a
But
hundred
we
years
won't be there in 100 years.
before they start to sound good. We won't know,
Yeah,
but in a couple 100 years, the bowls they're making today are going to sound great.
yeah. Well, thank you so much, Joseph.
Okay, thank you. Bye
You have a
bye.
great day. Bye.
You too. Thank you.